Hello to all of you from around the world. I want to thank you for joining us for another edition of Soulivity Today. We're broadcasting live from our studio right here in the nation's capital, Washington, D.C., and on KMET 1490 AM radio in Southern California. My name is Brian Westley Johnson, and whether you're at home, driving, or at work, we're always glad you're here with us. We have another amazing show for you today. I can't wait to get to it. But before we do that, I want to make sure that I say we're joined today by Sheila Applegate, the host of Consciously Awesome Living Show, which airs Wednesdays at noon right here on Soulivity TV. Hello, Sheila.
Hi, Brian. It's great to be back.
I know, man. Yeah, both of us are kind of nursing ourselves back to health. I mean, we came back from great vacations only to have some type of thing to kind of maybe slow us down a little bit in the new year. You're feeling better though,
But
right?
I am feeling a lot better. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And even when I was sick, we call it the new earth sickness now because I can still
Right.
function, but then I just get really tired in between. So yeah, it's been nice, but it's better
Yeah.
to feel more like myself. I was pretty foggy there for a while.
Yeah. And I always get a little grumpy because I'm always wanting to try to do something. And um it's like, man, I want to do this stuff and I'm sick and it's like,
Yeah.
like blah, blah, blah,
Yes.
blah, blah, blah. Well, we have a lot to talk about today. Um, this, there's been a lot going on in the world, especially once the new year hit. I mean, we're off to the races here in terms of the 2024 presidential election season. I mean, it's been going on, but now it's really, I mean, we've got the Iowa caucuses coming up. Um, things are heating up in terms of different court cases, especially with the former president. And there's this one story that hit the national news over the last month or so regarding the resignation of Dr. Claudine Gay. I'm sure you've heard about this as well. She was the former president of Harvard University. Um, Sheila, this one kind of hit me hard. I will admit that.
Yeah,
Um,
with
um,
good reason.
yeah. Now, for those of you who may not be aware of the initial backstory, Dr. Gay became the first non-white person to serve as the president of Harvard. And she served previously at that institution as the dean of social sciences, as well as the dean of Harvard Faculty Arts and Sciences. Now, in December of last year, I want to say this year, this last year, 2023, Dr. Gay, along with two other university presidents, faced pressure from the public and from a congressional committee to resign over responses to a question about anti-Semitism on their campuses. Now, later, Gay faced accusations of plagiarism, including a probe by the same committee. And in January of this year, she resigned. Now, you may be surprised to know that the facts that I just laid out aren't all the facts. Sheila, you know about this, but I'm letting other people know about this now. And that Dr. Gay's presidency was under attack even before she accepted the position. So I want to frame today's conversation, Sheila, with talking about a name that you don't hear too much about in the news. And his name is Christopher Rufo. And Mr. Rufo has been on a crusade for a long time to eliminate diversity, equity, and inclusion programs in institutions of higher learning. And this has been for years now. And if you haven't learned anything about this person, we're about to help you out. Let's learn more about Rufo and the things that are happening with DEI initiatives that he's been trying to dismantle from MSNBC and one of my favorites, Ali Velshi.
I'd like to make it explicit. The president and the White House, it's within their authority and power to immediately issue an executive order abolishing critical race theory trainings from the federal government.
That was the conservative activist Christopher Rufo in September of 2020, making an explicit request that former President Trump issue an executive order abolishing critical race theory training from the federal government. Rufo is likely the reason your conservative uncle knows the phrase critical race theory to begin with. He's the reason Fox News became obsessed with it, and the reason that Trump became obsessed with it as a buzz term for pretty much anything to do with race. We know, thanks to reporting from the Washington Post, that when Rufo made his request, Trump was watching. Within a month, Trump issued an executive order demanding that no federal money be used for critical race theory. Chris Rufo got what he asked for. After that, Rufo's anti-CRT campaign ginned up enough conservative pressure against Nicole Hannah-Jones, the co-founder of the 1619 Project, that the University of North Carolina denied her tenure. Jones had a Pulitzer Prize, a MacArthur Genius Grant, and support from the school's chancellor and faculty. But conservative pressure worked. Rufo then set his sights on Florida. He helped Florida Governor Ron DeSantis craft legislation like the Stop Woke Act that restricted discussions of race and gender in schools, universities, and workplaces. Early last year, DeSantis appointed Rufo as one of the members of the Board of Trustees for Florida's public university, New College. There again, Rufo publicized his goal early and loudly. He tweeted, quote, "We will be shutting down low-performing, ideologically captured academic departments and hiring new faculty. The student body will be recomposed over time. Some current students will self-select out. Others will graduate. We'll recruit new students who are mission-aligned." At New College board meetings, Rufo made clear that he did not care if his goals failed to win hearts and minds.
One of the items that I discussed today with Governor DeSantis and with legislators present is that diversity, equity, and inclusion, which sounds great, but in practice divides people and offers separate judgments on the basis of race and identity. My opinion does matter, actually, unfortunately for you.
His opinion does matter. Within a month of that comment, Rufo's Board of Trustees had abolished the college's Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Office. They then did things like axe the school's Gender Studies program and recruit professors more in line with their conservative mission. Since Rufo's board took over, more than a third of the former faculty have resigned, and about 125 students have chosen not to return. Rufo's plan worked. And now today, we are seeing the impact of Rufo's latest crusade. A crusade against the first black woman to serve as president of the oldest institution of higher education in the country, Harvard President Claudine Gay. Last month, Rufo tweeted, quote, "We launched the Claudine Gay plagiarism story from the right. The next step is to smuggle it into the media apparatus of the left, legitimizing the narrative to center-left actors who have the power to topple her. Then squeeze," end quote. In the past few weeks, allegations that Harvard's president had plagiarized academic work accomplished exactly what Rufo predicted. They went from Rufo's blog to the pages of conservative publications to mainstream publications like the New York Times. Now Harvard itself has investigated the allegations and found that they are, at worst, instances of inadequate citation. But they are not what the word plagiarism makes you think of. Gay was not stealing anyone's ideas, nor was she presenting other people's ideas as her own. Nevertheless, today, Claudine Gay resigned anyway. The story of Claudine Gay's resignation is about a lot of things. Was it easier for conservatives to push her out because she's a woman? Was it easier because she's black? Probably all of the above. But this is also a story of bad actors like Chris Rufo trying to bend academia toward their own ideological missions.
So, did you get it? Everybody, did you get that?
I get it.
Yeah. So, we have a guy who doesn't believe in DEI initiatives, and that's his own, right to do that. but that has aligned himself with activism on the right wing of politics, where he's gotten on boards and he's made it very, very clear that he's part of a movement to change institutions of higher learning and bend them to what he believes they should be about based upon right-wing ideology. And they created a path to have either Dr. Gay fired or resigned based upon that whole pathway, right? Remember, he tweeted out during all this, hey, we're going to throw this plagiarism thing out here. We're going to amplify it with our own media company, with our own media outlets, have left-wing people pick it up and then amplify it, and then they'll put pressure on her to leave, right? And that's exactly what happened. So this isn't just want to make sure we're connecting all the dots here. That this isn't just, oh, well, this just happened during a congressional meeting and this kind of thing, that this was planned, it was executed, and it was accomplished, where the first non-white president of Harvard University only spent basically a year. And basically, I'd say 30% of that was just dealing with this crap, and where she had to resign. So with that, I'll turn it over to you, Sheila, for your reactions to what this, like the beginning of this, right? This what's behind the scenes, what's been going on behind the scenes.
Yeah, I think the behind the scenes is the most important. It's interesting because I started noticing the headlines about the plagiarism in Harvard. I don't know if I even paid attention to it being the president or who it was, but I like looked at that and, with prejudice thinking that, why do I care about what another white man did? Because
Right,
I just assumed they
right,
were talking, but the thought was, wait, that all of them do, like, why, why is this person being targeted? But I didn't look into it. I think that part came out over Christmas, or I was distracted, but
right,
I I purposely avoided it. I'm like, whatever this is not what it is being presented. I'm not looking. I'm not giving it any attention at that point. And so I guess I'm glad I didn't until you brought it to my attention. And I was like, oh, okay. So it was this, a smear campaign, which is what to
right,
me it seemed, because like just from the first headlines, I was like, that's a smear
right.
campaign. But to understand the bigness of it, I guess this is the big story. So thank you, Brian, for bringing it out, because
Oh,
this
thanks.
is the story we need to be aware of. And they're giving it to us word by word. They're telling us the boldness of just telling us what they're doing,
Right.
can be to our advantage if we pay attention. Right.
Absolutely. When I started to put the pieces together around this, and thank you to Ali Velshi for covering this as well. Coming up in the next segment, we're going to play the first clip of two clips of an interview that he had with Nicole Hannah-Jones, who she was probably the first major figure that got attacked by these folks, because she's like the antithesis of, the heart of people learning more about specifically African American culture and history and that kind of thing, and how it relates to our current atmosphere and environment here in America, right? And they talk about this. They talk about Dr. Claudine Gay, and from her perspective. And so as we go to break, I just want everybody to think about this as we're over the next couple of minutes. The congressional committee, that when this all began, they only targeted Ivy League schools. The three schools were only basically Ivy League. Or around Ivy League, right? why didn't they bring upon presidents from Southern schools in there, right? Because there are stories of Southern schools also doing and practicing DEI initiatives and also dealing with anti-Semitism there. Why didn't they have those folks there, right? So just think about that, right? So we're going to take a quick break, and we'll be back with more on this story with me and Sheila as we talk about Dr. Claudine Gay and the fight for diversity, equity, and inclusion in our institutions of higher learning. We'll be right back. Hi there, this is Brian with Soulivity.com. I want to share some exciting news about our new Aspire Academy by Soulivity. Now, you probably want to know what the Aspire Academy by Soulivity is. Well, it exclusively connects you with people around the globe and who share the intense desire to improve themselves and create a better life for themselves today. There's classes, there's workshops, there's live events, and even more exclusively just for you. You see, I wanted you to have a safe space where you could grow, you can learn, and it would empower you in all aspects of your life, including your mind, your body, and your soul. So how do you get started? Well, it is so easy. First of all, the best part, joining Aspire Academy is absolutely free. Just click on the Join Now button, sign up, and begin your journey. As a special part of this invitation to you, there are some free courses that are available for you to try from our amazing roster of coaches and collaborators. It's our way of saying thank you for all of your support and being with us along our journey of expansion. I hope you enjoy the Aspire Academy by Soulivity today. Start the process. Learn more about your passion, your purpose, and how to live a higher quality life. Hey, we're back here with more on Soulivity today. We are talking about the fight for diversity, equity, and inclusion in institutions of higher learning and its relationship to the resignation of Dr. Claudine Gay as the president of Harvard University. And Sheila Applegate is back with me as well as we talk about this important topic. Sheila, in our last segment, we now found out that there's more going on here than just a slip up on a congressional committee, some plagiarism, and that all led to Dr. Claudine Gay resigning. That this is really more about a broader attack on initiatives to increase diversity, equity, and inclusion as it relates to the futures of institutions of higher learning. But I want to turn our attention to this topic from another perspective, and that's the perspective of the women of color who suffer the related attacks. I think it's important to actually put ourselves in their shoes and from their perspective, really gain some insights. And so, as I mentioned before, I found this great interview that's between MSNBC's Ali Velshi and Nicole Hannah-Jones, who's the creator of the 1619 Project and the Knight Chair in Race and Journalism at Howard University, that's here in Washington, D.C. And in this first clip, it's important to see that they frame what Dr. Gay was going through during this entire experience. So let's watch and listen to this important interview.
Joining me now is Nicole Hannah-Jones, Pulitzer Prize-winning reporter at the New York Times Magazine, creator of the 1619 Project and the Knight Chair in Race and Journalism at Howard University. As you point out, Nicole, we never meet on good occasions.
That's right.
But this one's important for people to understand because a lot of Americans have been hoodwinked. They think Claudine Gay is out because she said something anti-Semitic, which she didn't. They think Claudine Gay's out because she plagiarized. She had some inconsistencies in her citations, which she reviewed and asked for corrections to, and Harvard determined that that was not, that the proper steps were taken. She's out because they came for her. She's out because a very organized group of people, very similar to the people who came for you, came for her.
Yes, absolutely. You know, one, let me just say, my heart is really with Dr. Gay. This is a woman who had a stellar academic career and has had her reputation sullied strictly for political reasons. I know exactly what that's like. This is not about plagiarism. This is not about anti-Semitism. This is about, as you said, an extremely well-organized propaganda campaign from the right to make anyone Black in a high position of power seem like a diversity hire, an unqualified affirmative action hire. This is the next iteration of the anti-critical race theory campaign that led to the banning of books and curricula that's now trying to target people of color in leadership positions and do a great deal of damage to the racial progress that has been made.
And in fact, it's the same people, the same guy, Chris Rufo, who popularized CRT incorrectly, who also had Donald Trump write edicts about what it should be. The same people who wanted to get 1619 out of the vernacular and started the hashtag 1776. It's the same thing. It's this movement that says some of you have come too far, and we're taking it back now.
Absolutely. I mean, just look at the language that's being used. So one, as we were discussing, Chris Rufo is not even trying to camouflage what he's doing.
Correct. He puts it all out on social media.
Lays the playbook out. He says, this is what we're going to do, and then he does it. What is disheartening is how he's able to lay out the playbook and be so successful. What happened with Claudine Gay? Anyone who's ever written a long-form paper that goes through multiple revisions knows that you can make citation errors. You've rewritten the same sentence 12 times, and eventually the quotations fall off, or sometimes you don't cite it in the right place. Even her...
It happens commonly.
It happens all the time, which we've seen. It happens even with some of the people who have made the accusations or who are related to some of the people who've made the accusations to Dr. Gay. But we're in a landscape now where, because this is about politics and not really concerns about plagiarism, that you can't make mistakes. You cannot make an error, and especially as a Black woman.
That's the bigger issue, because there are Black women who enjoy positions of authority in this country in a way that hasn't been done historically, because we as a society realized that that was an important thing to do, who are now, they got targets on them.
That's right.
Every Black woman in a position of authority in this country, they're going to wonder, did you really get that job properly, or were you a diversity hire, or did you get a leg up because you're Black?
Yes, and this is what I say. This is how it is impossible for Black women to win in this moment that we're in, because if you're not successful, then they say you were lazy, you didn't work hard enough. If you are successful, they say that you didn't deserve it, and they will put you under a level of scrutiny that, frankly, none of us would be able to withstand. I know what that feels like. If you go through every single word, if you parse every single, where's the comma, where are the quotation marks, I don't think anyone's work would stand up to that scrutiny. But we also, therefore, give grace and say, okay, you made an error.
This is how you correct it. All the universities have a system for that you find, you ask for a review, you get the review. But
so let's just take a moment right here before we go to the next clip. So in terms of the plagiarism, there was no plagiarism. Let's just push that out there really quickly. There was no plagiarism. What the people who were attacking her wanted was for it to just have the appearance of impropriety as it revolved around her dissertation. That's all they wanted. And that, as Dr. Gay has said in her responses to this, as Nicole Hannah-Jones, who has won awards for her writing, has said, and as Ali Velshi has said, these were minor errors in the dissertation that happen all the time. It's the same as writing a creative work. Sheila, you have done this in terms of the things that you have offered. I do this all the time in terms of things that we publish on Soulivity.com. You're going to find errors in your content if you're looking hard enough. And that there's grace that's given to academics when it comes to dissertations to correct that. That is, doesn't need to blow up into this huge thing around plagiarism.
Right.
And so just wanted to say that first before I got your response.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think that that's one of the primary things to remember is it wasn't real. It's not real. It's not the story. And
Right.
the story is what we're talking about here today. And, you know, I guess the good side of it is that there are Black women rising high enough in these prestigious positions
Mhm.
th- that the side that feels that it needs to suppress is scared. And so they're pushing it
Yeah.
more, but that's
Yeah.
a small consolation. It isn't a consolation. It's good. It's what we need. It
Yeah.
is a sign of
Yeah.
progress. And
Yeah.
we have to stay vigilant to not let
Yeah.
that derail what is happening, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's funny that you mentioned derail because as my grandmother would say a long time ago, she said, God don't like ugly, right? Which means don't throw rocks in a glass house because you may get cut yourself. And in this next clip, in this next clip, that's exactly what happened, right? Where one of the major people who was calling for the firing or resignation of Dr. Gay, their wife came under scrutiny for her dissertation as she is working as an esteemed faculty member at MIT. So let's learn a little bit more about this.
Here's something interesting. So this happens now to Bill Ackman's wife.
Yes.
Bill Ackman's been on a campaign. His wife gets found to have done some stuff. It's actually more egregious than what anything Claudine Gay was accused of doing. That said, he said she's a human. She makes mistakes,
Yes.
which I think is a reasonable answer. And I think we should give Bill Ackman's wife the grace of the fact that she's a human who made a mistake. But because this has been dug up, now he's saying we're coming for all of you. He's got money, so he's going to fund a review of every academic at MIT's research. This didn't happen before there were women and people of color in power. People could just get away with whatever they could get away with. We weren't really in a meritocracy because a whole bunch of people were left out of that discussion.
Absolutely. I mean, what we're seeing is what we know has always been the case. White men get the benefit of the doubt. They get the presumption that they are qualified, that they are the most qualified. A person of color, and particularly a woman of color, particularly a Black woman, the presumption is that she is not, and that she is deserving of this extra scrutiny because she shouldn't be in that position. Let me tell you, in the 380 years that Harvard has existed, Claudine Gay is not the first Black woman because she was the first Black woman who was qualified. Mm-hmm. She was the first Black woman who had an equal chance to actually be put into that position. And now she has the shortest tenure of anyone in that position. That is not about Claudine Gay and her qualifications. That is about a society that is unprepared to see a Black woman at kind of the citadel of American academic power.
Wow. So again, and I want your comments about this, Sheila. So again, just to make sure everybody got that. So one of the major donors to Harvard University, who was on the forefront of trying to get Dr. Gay fired or have her resign, and this has not been just for this. This has been from the beginning. I don't think that he even wanted her in the position. His wife was found liable of plagiarism in her dissertation as she's been working at MIT. And that the amount of plagiarism, just to give you guys some facts here, the Business Insider, I believe, .com found that that some of her sightings were from Wikipedia, y'all. Wikipedia in her dissertation. Not from the sources within Wikipedia, just Wikipedia itself, and she hadn't even sourced it right. So with that, I'll go to you, Sheila.
Well, I like what they said, that we don't, she is human and we don't need to
Right.
make her the villain. And it is
Right.
another woman being brought down because of what a man has done. So we need to
Right.
acknowledge that. And but
Excellent point.
the point that is being made is that this happens, right? I think that's
Right.
why, like, we shouldn't, like you said, don't throw stones. The key to me that is so very clear, and it's said in so many different ways, it's the systemic
Right.
discrimination that is toppling, and the Ivy League up higher education has been one of the main ways that we separate people and keep them from um progressing into higher status, right? Like
Yeah.
to moving ahead. And Ivy League is at the very core of that, where it's been the way to keep money in the hands of the minority of people who hold the wealth from early on,
Right.
right? That's
Right.
generational wealth.
Right.
And though a lot of people, those Ivy League schools in their drive for education are making changes, but that underbelly of it, that's been part of the system that keeps people separate, is so apparent right now, I guess. Does that
Mm-hmm.
make sense to you,
Mm-hmm.
Brian? What I'm saying?
Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely, it does. I'd also say this. The most important point I think that they were making in that, or points I should say that they were making in the interview. One was that the grace that was being asked for by one person wasn't being extended to Dr. Gay after
Right,
tenured service at Harvard University, right?
right,
So the grace that was given was not equally given between the two. And then the reaction to the donor's wife being found out that she had plagiarized in her dissertation wasn't just only grace, like, oh, well, these things happen and da 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 da. It was retribution. Oh, you went after my wife, so I'm going to come after you. Now, who's he
right,
talking
right,
about now? Who is that person talking about? Who are they? Who is that person going after? Just going after more qualified African American women and other women, maybe of color, maybe of not color, that are going to be running our esteemed higher institutions of learning. What is he talking
right,
about? So that's a question. So that I want to make sure that we're all framing this and understanding that it's this thing of what is for me is not for thee, right?
right,
Where
right.
which is what diversity, equity, and inclusion is all about, right?
Right.
So,
Yeah.
uh,
And he's definitely,
yeah,
his you is definitely you people, right? I'm coming after
right,
you
right.
people
You
across the
people,
board. Yeah.
correct,
What are the you
correct,
people? Yeah.
correct. And again, it kind of shows just more broadly that the playing field is unequal, and that women of color, women generally, but women of color specifically, have to go through so much more scrutiny to get
Right.
ahead and to get to even a more limited place than other people do, specifically white men. So we just wanted to push this out there. We're not attacking white men. We're just
Right.
using this as a framework for everybody to understand that if you're looking for a world that's more diverse, more equitable, and that's more inclusionary, there are people that are actually attacking that and trying to make sure that that does not happen for their own gain. Okay. So
Right.
listen, we're going to take a quick break. Sheila, I want to make sure that we talk around how does knowing all this empower us, right? And I've got a great clip. You're going to love it, love it, love it. All of you are going to love it too. It's from Rhodes Scholar Westmore, who's now the current governor of Maryland, but he wasn't governor when this was done. But I know you're going to love it. So we'll be back in about 2 minutes. Find all of the Satana products at our Go shop at go.soulivity.com.
Have you ever asked the question, if I was to be anything, what would I be? Regardless of money, regardless of status, beyond popularity and fame. Living your passion, feeling your life has purpose. Soulivity is a space to nurture that which lives in all of us. A place where work can become play, and doing what we love creates the dreams of a lifetime.
Hey, we're back with more here on Soulivity today. We are talking about the fight for diversity, equity, and inclusion, and this is specific to higher institutes of higher learning, and how this is all kind of related to the resignation of Dr. Claudine Gay, who was the first non-white president of Harvard University. And Sheila, I've got a great clip that's coming up that I want everybody to see, because as always, we want to leave people empowered from having these conversations and bringing these facts forward. And sometimes it's really hard because we're talking about things that have plagued our country for a long time. A lot of things around, racism and discrimination and systematic prejudice that has been part of this country almost since the beginning since the founding of our nation. And so I wanted to kind of present this next clip from Westmore, who I love. He's currently now the governor of Maryland, the state of Maryland here in this part of the world. And he talks about, where do we go? What's the question we need to be asking ourselves when it comes to diversity, equity, and inclusion? Because I think his answer really nails it and gives us like a road path forward. So let's do this clip and then we'll talk about it on the other side.
Let's talk about terminology to begin with. How do you introduce that conversation such that it is inclusive and inviting? Do we just call it racism and say, deal with it, that's what it is, or should we think about it in a more expansive way?
I think part of the whole idea of terminology too comes back to what are our goals? What are our goals in all this? And actually, I think, even after the election of President Obama, where I heard people say like, well, it's good that we can move towards a post-racial America.
It's hard to even say that word now without sort of a side eye.
Well, I don't think it's the right goal. I don't want to exist in a post-racial America, because I'm not ashamed of my race. And nobody should be ashamed of theirs. I don't want to exist in a post-racial America. I want to exist in a post-racist America. I want to exist in a place where me, as an African American, and everyone else, whatever their background or of origin is, they can be proud of that and know they're not going to be discriminated because of it. And so there's a difference. And so I think in terms of the terminology piece, even the ideas of what type of goals are we aiming for, that's what I think becomes the crucial question. And even past the ideas of what are we going to call it, I still don't think we're in a place that we're even aiming for the same things.
Mm-hmm. Tell me more about what you mean by that.
Well, I think that, you know, it kind of goes back to the idea of, you know, you talk about this idea of what makes America great, right? And even the whole thing about making America great again. Well, I can tell you for a whole lot of people in this country, America is still reaching for its definition of greatness.
Right.
So when we hear that statement for a lot of different people, it conjures up different ideas. It conjures up different memories.
So a suggestion that America was greater when there were less of you around?
Correct. And so this concept of making America great again, I think the thing that makes America great is that America has been this constant experiment. America has been this thing that has asked itself repeatedly to question itself, to question where it is, to question, do we live up to its greatest ideals? There's a song by a guy named Donny Hathaway, and it's just called A Song for You, and he says, there's a line when he says, I know your image of me is what I hope to be. And I think in many ways, that's what our country is, where we know this image of America is what we hope to be. But that's the beauty of it, is that we're constantly asking ourselves and saying, are we there yet? We're like the kids in the back seat of the car, right? Are we there yet? Are we there yet? And I think part of the joy of America is the fact that that you also then have the parents in the front seat saying, almost, almost. And I think that continuing to push that almost so one day where we can say we're there yet, that we are here, becomes an important goal. But for me, my there yet is not necessarily when people look and they don't see race. But my are we there yet is when we can look at each other and we can acknowledge our differences and say, but I'm better because you're different, because you're in the room.
I'm better because you're different. I'm better because you're in the room.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. That's so
Thoughts?
powerful. Well,
Yeah.
it's just everything that he said in that clip was so powerful and so rang so true to me. And the idea of a post-racist country is my ideal too. And I'm better because of you as well. You know, I was just in the last segment thinking, I have so much reverence and admiration for especially women of color, and because they have to go through so much. You know, I know how much you
Yeah.
go through, but just as a woman, and I
Yeah.
can
It's different.
perceive what you go through from being a person of color, but the
Yeah.
combination of those two and the perseverance and the grace with which so many women of color move up in this role to me is I'm excited about the world post racism, where we're learning
Yeah.
and honoring each other and drawing the depth of consciousness from each other. And I believe in it.
Right.
I'm gonna, that's the one I'm holding forward.
Right. I thank you for that. Thank you for that. And I think that Westmore frames this beautifully because he starts by saying, well, what's the goal? Right.
Mm-hmm.
And that do we really want to live in a world where it's quote unquote colorblind which for me is code word as whatever the dominant culture is that becomes the dominant culture, right?
Right.
And that things like Kwanzaa go away, and that Christmas and or Hanukkah become just the dominant thing, and that the history that is celebrated amongst African Americans isn't as important anymore, right? Um, I love the fact that he's saying, well, we should be post-racism, as you were saying, not post-racial, right? Because we are better. We keep calling our countries the melting pot, right? And that we come from all these
Right.
different areas. We are a country of immigrants, right? Except for First Nation people that have been here since the dawn of
Right.
time, right? We're all immigrants, and so we've all put into this country different bits and pieces, from music to art to food. I mean, across the spectrum. And so we should be celebrating our diversity, celebrating our different cultures and bringing that into higher institutes of learning, right?
Hmm.
Where students can learn more about each other's backgrounds and why things are in certain communities that are different than other ones, not better, different, right? And then celebrating those
Hmm.
differences. So I just want to make sure that we end it today giving all of you out there something to grasp hold of when you're seeing things like this happen, and that you can do your own research and you can go down a little bit deeper into understanding the bigger picture, and put yourself in the shoes of the people who are being accused of things that they're not really doing, right? And so, yeah. So thank you, Sheila. Thank you for that. I, appreciate you doing that, and talking about that,
Yeah.
and that reverence. We running out of time, but I want to make sure that we got in some of our Soulivity shameless plugs before we have to end today's show. You've got something that's really, really cool that's going on. That's your Consciously Awesome Gnostic Adventure that's coming up. I think the registration date. It starts on January 16th. Correct? There's still time for people to
Yep.
register.
There is still time. This is an intensive transformational program that will help you connect with your higher consciousness in all the different levels, very personally, and bring it
Gotcha.
into your daily life to help your personal or your personal relationships, your work, all of that. And you can learn about that at SheilaApplegate.com if you would like to take
Woo.
that journey with us.
Woohoo. I love it. I love it. I love it. I love it. Thank you, Sheila. Really appreciate you being here and taking on this topic for me. Sometimes it's a little tough because we get a little into, stuff that's not easy to talk about. And so
Yeah.
thank you for being here and sharing
Well,
that.
thank you for
Sharing your
trusting me and caring about my
oh,
opinion. I feel
of
honored.
course. Of course. Of course. Listen, before we get out of here, I just want to end uh, today's show with, something from Dr. Gay herself.
Mm.
She wrote out a resignation letter, and that has been publicized on a lot of the major news networks. And so I wanted to make sure that I got a bit of her resignation letter out here, and that we kind of ended with her words that I thought were so appropriate for today's show. And she says, this is the last paragraph of her resignation letter. And she says, as we welcome a new year and a new semester, I hope we all can look forward to brighter days. Sad as I am to be sending this message, my hopes for Harvard remain undimmed. When my brief presidency is remembered, I hope it will be seen as a moment of reawakening to the importance of striving to find our common humanity. and of not allowing rancor or bitter patrician to undermine the vital process of education. I trust we will all find ways in this time of intense challenge and controversy to recommit ourselves to the excellence, to the openness, and the independence that are crucial to what our university stands for and to our capacity to serve the world. Sincerely, Dr. Claudine Gay. Wow. So with that, yeah, right. I want to thank each and every one of you for joining us for this Soulivity today. This is how we do it every single weekday from Monday through Friday. You can listen to our live streams right here on Soulivity TV at 8 a.m. Eastern, or you can also listen to Soulivity Today out on the West Coast at 8 a.m. Pacific time on KMET 1490 AM radio in Southern California. There's a lot going on here at Soulivity. We've got great content to help you keep inspired. Remember to follow us on social media so you can learn more about what's happening, including tips and other things that are happening in our world. Want to remind you, too, that we've got another great Joy Keepers coming up on January 24th. That's Wednesday, January 4th. You don't want to miss that. Sheila leads the meditation. We have some great communal kind of things that are happening with the groups that there. It's all live. It's on Zoom. If you miss it, you can always watch the replay, but you got to reserve your seat so you can get the link to the replay. And, you know, our website is full of information as well. Go check out our website, especially the new astrological forecast with Sonia Francis as he talks about the first new moon of 2024. And with that, I want to say again, thank you for joining us. And we will see you next time right here on Soulivity Today. Keep fighting the good fight and creating a life, your best life today, with passion, purpose, and high quality living. We'll see you next time. Bye for now.
This work is subject to copyright owned by Affinity Global LLC. Any reproduction or republication of all or part of this is expressly prohibited unless Affinity Global LLC has explicitly granted its prior written consent. All other rights reserved.